Hello everyone! I am showing you how to make these midnight sky snow globe ornaments. They are a variation of the snow globe ornament that I made a few years ago. I'll link that tutorial in the info cards and description down below so you can see the basics of how these ornaments are made. This is just an enhanced version of it with the nice midnight blue background on it. You'll see here there's a few variations and we'll talk through how they're done. If you are new to making snow globe ornaments, I highly suggest you check out my other video because I go into more detailed versions on how to get the trees in and that part, but I will still cover it at a glance here. But if you're new to it, check out that video. So as you're looking at these finished midnight sky snow globe ornaments, you'll see there's a few differences in the backgrounds, and it's really just a matter of paint application. But we'll talk through them here in a moment. Now, all of these are plastic shatterproof ornaments and the good old bottle brush trees from Michaels. Some of the ornaments I did keep to my original ornament plan of how I made them years ago with some rich espresso at the bottom to kind of symbolize the ground. I ultimately decided it's not necessary across the board, so an optional step. The midnight blue, I used a satin blue paint from Martha Stewart collection that I picked up from Michaels. It is, I would say a little thick. It's too thick to go in as is, so you do need to cut it with water. But this is where you can get the different effects. If you cut it with a little bit of water, like you're seeing in this example here, it's going to take a long time to cover the inside of the ornament, but it'll be a much deeper solid color and it won't let as much light through. So that's one option, and it's pretty easy, it's straightforward, and it's probably the quickest because you only really have to do one, I'll say, pass at it, and then you can drain out the rest of the overflow paint and call it a day. Now, to get this midnight backdrop, true for all of the ornaments we're making today, you're going to put in a little bit at a time and swirl the ornament so that the paint covers about half of the back of whatever you want the back of the ornament to be. It doesn't have to be half. It could be more like 2/3 if you really want it to be more of an enclosed midnight enclosure effect. It's really up to you, but I would say try to shoot for at least half of the ornament covered. So whatever size ornament you're using, the bigger ornaments you see here are the 120 millimeter ornaments. I do have a few of the 100 millimeter ornaments. The bigger the better. It's easier for you to get the trees in. I'm using just good old plastic cups to hold the ornament so I can shift the paint around for it to pool up and I can drain it out later. Whatever setup you want to use, just make sure you have something you could drain your ornaments in. Now, with the lighter ornaments coloring here, all I did was water the paint down further and essentially work from the top of the ornament down. So you're going to do a full coverage, and then you were going to let that sit and pool at the bottom and let it dry. And then like you see here, you can see where I tilted the ornament again, but maybe only went 3/4 of the way up. And that's what creates that ridge there. This process takes a lot longer and is very hard to film. Whereas if I just did this just straight super dark process, it would be a lot quicker. So that being said, you can layer it on with the paint and having it go up part of the full all the way, then go up 3/4 of the way, then go up halfway, however many layers you want if the paint's thinned out. Your call. It does take a little bit longer to dry, and because you have to wait for it to completely dry in between, and then the paint at the bottom will pool up, and then you can tilt the ornament, essentially creating that next layer. So your call on how many layers, if you even want layers. Moving on to the speckled galaxy kind of night sky. I think it's more of like a starry night. I think at this point it's not really galaxy, it's more of a starry night. Just like you would make the speckled star in a galaxy painting with a toothbrush, if you were using anything smaller than a 120 millimeter ornament, you're going to have a hard time getting your finger and a toothbrush into the opening of the craft ornaments. So that's why I'm using a plastic knife for like a palette knife, and I'm just using the gold champagne paint on the toothbrush lightly. You saw me dunking the toothbrush in water just to get it a little wet. So you can do the splatter effect on a 360 in the ornament. You can just go all the way around the ornament. You could do just the back part of the ornament, just the front of the ornament. I liked playing with a lot of the different combinations, so you'll see at the end all of my ornaments have a slightly different finish to them. So whatever your midnight sky needs are, you can adjust accordingly. Now here you're seeing me do it in a 120 millimeter ornament, and that is, I mean, there's no graceful way to do this, like, let's be honest, but it's a lot easier because you can stick your fingers in. I'm wearing gloves, partially for cleanliness purposes and partially just because I have some injuries I'm trying to keep clean. Then you're on to the ornament decoration time, or I don't even know if this is decorations, but you're on to the fun part, the tree part. So here is just at a glance how this is happening. I'm lining up the tree. It has glue on the bottom, and you're just dropping it down. Super simple, but more details, like I said, are in my original video, and I'm just using a toothpick here, or a skewer, to finalize the tree location and really help get good coverage on the glue / bottom of the ornament. But for those of you who want to see a little bit more detail, don't worry, I'll show you here what I'm doing. E6000 is my glue preference, so if you have some of that, great. Try to get a clear one if you can. I have all of my trees that I'm going to use out and ready to go. It's okay if they're not 100% perfect, because remember, on these ornaments you have a backside, so if you have an ugly part of a tree, just put it towards the back. Now, I put a generous amount of glue on all of my ornaments, and I usually let it sit for about a minute or two just so it can start to get tacky and it's a little bit further along in the drying process, so you won't have as much wiggle room with it once it hits the interior of the ornament, but it makes it stickier quicker, so definitely worth it. So line them all up ahead of time, all your trees, get glue on them, and then let them sit for a minute or two, and usually by the time you get through one, the next one's pretty much ready to go. And like I said, if you have a clear E6000, that's the best option. I wouldn't recommend a hot glue for this because you won't have enough wiggle room to finagle these trees into place. So they've sat, you got gloves on. Maybe I have gloves on here. It's easier to, in my opinion, with the gloves on to try to grip the tree. Totally your call. It is a little bit of a snug fit at the top, but don't worry, the trees are essentially plastic wire. They're going to be fine. So using just the very tips of the tree in between your two fingers, I try to hover the tree over the spot that I want it to go to, and then just lightly drop it into place. And you see, it's only an inch or two down, really. I mean, depending on what size tree you're using. So it's already almost completely in place. So I like to use my skewer and push down in a few different angles to make sure the bottom of the tree is really secure and making good contact with the bottom of the ornament, because the more surface coverage that they have, the better and more likely they will be staying in place. Now, don't worry if it doesn't land correctly. I just want to show you guys it's okay if it doesn't land upright. It happens to everybody. All you do is you take your skewer and you poke it on the other end and just slowly work its way back upright. This might be a one skewer problem or two skewer problems. Could go either way depending on the size of the tree and how off-centered it is. I really like using the larger trees because I think they're easier to work with, but if you wanted to use a bunch of little trees, you could. Just be mindful of they're a little bit harder to keep upright because it takes somehow more effort to keep them upright or to get them upright. I don't know why, but it does. This is also a totally good time to try to rotate the trees. If you notice, like, maybe a squished part of your bottle bush tree is facing forward, now is the time to rotate it. I like to let mine dry overnight, and once they're dry, I give them a good shake, like you would be if you had a bell, something, whatever, just to make sure that there's good coverage on the glue and the tree is staying upright. Overnight, it should be 100% dry at this point, so you shouldn't see any movement in the trees. If there is, now is the time to fix it. With the smaller ornaments, I did use a smaller tree, but mostly it was because I didn't have more trees available. I was just using what I had on hand. I have my clear, chunky glitter on hand that I used years ago when I made these other ones and other projects. It's in the kids section usually of the craft store. and you just directly pour it in. Don't worry if you get it on the tree. Part of the benefit of it being a snow globe experience is that it's okay if you shake it, and glitter is going to get everywhere inside the ornament anyways, so don't worry about it getting on your tree. In fact, use that as a guide because you want your trees to look like they have snow on them, right? So a good rule of thumb is to make sure at minimum that you have enough glitter in here to cover up the base of your tree. That's the minimum. Now, if you like that look, good, stop, whatever you want to do. I like to add a little bit more, so I'll go back and add more once I get glitter in all of them. But I like the snow to come up almost to the bottom of the tree. You see there? And then when you give it a good shake or two, you're going to lose some glitter into the tree and to the edges of the ornament. That static is going to hold that plastic glitter into place. So that's why I say add a little bit extra glitter if you can, because you will lose some around the edge of the trees, you know, like kind of like a fake flocking, and along the interior portion of the ornament. Like you see there up at the top, that's all glitter, that kind of just static electricity pulled up there when we shook it around. Here's some more, and you see how as I'm holding them, the snow is moving around. That's why I want you to have extra in there, so at no point, even if the tree is bumped and the ornament shifts while it's hanging up, it still looks presentable, if that makes sense. So that's all there is to it. Super simple, really a lot of different options with the finishes. As I'm showing you all of these, I hope you can see that there's lots of, like this one looks like, I think this one had 2 layers of paint. So the top layer got put on and then I did one more layer inside. It's super easy. Really, it takes a little bit of time for them to dry out in between the layerings, but honestly, it's very, very simple. And in between the layers drying, you just let the blue pull up at the bottom in the center of the ornament. And even if it leaves a big pile of blue there later, nobody's ever going to know because you're going to cover it with snow and a pretty tree. So like this one has, what, 4 layers on it? Really just depends on what type of effect you're going for. This kind of offers that mountainy look. This one here is kind of got a weird galaxy vibe going to it. They all look beautiful on the tree. They're going to have lights behind them on your Christmas tree anyways. So unless you go for the straight opaque dark blue, they're still going to have really great lights shining through in the back of them, making them look even prettier. But this one doesn't have any light coming through it really, and it looks beautiful still, and it adds a nice bit of contrast with the green tree in the ornament on your green tree in person in your living room, your dining room, wherever it is. As we're going from ornament to ornament here, this is my 2020 Christmas tree that is inspired by midnight blue, coppers, champagnes, a lot of metallics. So if you want to see how this tree came together, I have a whole video on how I did the floral element, and you should see the tree topper on this sucker. It is awesome. And then I have a whole separate video on how I put in the ornaments and layered them in. And if you're looking for another shatterproof ornament, I have a whole video on how to make finials that are actually made out of some of these same ornaments that we're using in this project. So if you have extra, it might be a great option to spruce up your tree with. Alright guys, those videos are all going to be linked in the info cards and down below, so make sure you check them out if you need more Christmas inspiration. As always, thanks so much for watching.